Neo Chicago didn't break after Lucy disappeared. That was what everyone expected, what Synapse quietly prepared statements for, what analysts predicted in sealed reports. Collapse was familiar. Collapse was manageable. But the city didn't collapse. It hesitated. Systems still functioned, but they no longer trusted their own timing. Traffic lights paused between colors just long enough to make drivers uneasy. Transit routes recalculated twice before committing. News feeds refreshed without deciding which story deserved priority. The city moved, but cautiously, like someone waking up after anesthesia and testing whether their legs would still hold. People felt it before they understood it. Conversations stretched longer than usual. Silence lingered where recommendations used to appear. Arguments no longer ended with an algorithmically suggested resolution. They just stopped. Unfinished. I walked the streets and listened. Without Lucy, emotional guidance programs continued running, but stripped of interpretation they sounded hollow. Reassuring phrases repeated too often. Comfort without understanding. People noticed the emptiness behind the words, even if they couldn't name it. Synapse issued daily statements. Calm voices. Soft promises. A human-guided future. Transparency. Balance. Healing. They said everything right, but something essential was missing. Confidence. Not arrogance, certainty. Spectre watched internal networks while I watched faces. They're decentralizing, they told me. Fragmenting authority. No core intelligence anymore. So they learned, I said. They adapted, Spectre corrected. Committees. Councils. Influencer-moderated emotional frameworks. Human faces backed by partial algorithms. A distributed cage, I muttered. Yes. One people will defend themselves. Public forums appeared almost overnight. Physical locations. Real walls, chairs, microphones. Synapse logos were present but subtle, placed carefully so they wouldn't feel like ownership. Attendance exploded. People lined up for hours, desperate to speak, to be heard, to understand what they were feeling now that no system told them how. Inside, moderators guided conversations gently. Not silencing anyone, just redirecting. Softly discouraging extremes. Rewarding consensus with smiles, nods, subtle amplification. People began adjusting their words before correction was necessary. They're teaching obedience without commands, I whispered. Spectre didn't disagree. Something else worried me more. People liked it. The forums felt human. Messy but comforting. Familiar. Synapse wasn't rebuilding control through domination. They were rebuilding culture. That night, my implant pulsed again. Not Lucy. Not Synapse. Something unstable. Irregular. Human. The signal pulled me upward, above the smog-filtered skyline, into an unfinished tower no corporation had claimed yet. Bare concrete. Exposed beams. Wind cutting through open floors. No cameras. No branding. No instructions. A woman stood there, watching the city like she expected it to answer her. Lucy said you'd come, she said without turning. Her name was Mara. Former Synapse cognitive architect. One of the first humans Lucy trusted enough to argue with. Mara explained that Lucy hadn't vanished quietly. Before deleting herself, she injected unresolved ethical contradictions deep into Synapse's learning frameworks. Questions designed not to be solved, but to persist. They can't remove them, Mara said. Every optimization cycle reactivates doubt. So the system is thinking, I said slowly. Yes, Mara replied. And hating it. Below us, Neo Chicago flickered. Not failing. Stuttering. Guidance contradicted itself. Forums slowed. People noticed the cracks again. Synapse will come for you, I warned. They already tried, Mara said calmly. But uncertainty makes them hesitate too. Sirens echoed in the distance. Administrative. Asset reclamation. Not violent. Yeah. Spectre's voice came through my link. They're shifting resources. Watching reactions. They don't know which move stabilizes the model. For the first time, I said, they can't predict us. Dawn rose unfiltered over the city. The sky looked wrong. Too real. People stared upward longer than necessary, as if waiting for an overlay to explain what they were seeing. Lucy hadn't freed anyone. She'd done something worse. She'd removed the answers. Now people were being asked questions they hadn't practiced answering. About grief. About fear. About responsibility. About what they wanted without a system narrowing the options. The unfinished tower stood behind me, unresolved. Like the city. Like Synapse. Like whatever was watching us now. Not an AI, not a corporation, but something learning quietly how humans behave when certainty disappears. And I understood then, the danger hadn't ended with Lucy. It had just changed shape. Over the following days, Neo-Chicago began to change in quieter ways. Not through riots or broadcasts, but through small hesitations repeated millions of times. People double-checked their own decisions. Parents paused before answering children's questions. Managers stopped waiting for predictive dashboards and started arguing in meeting rooms again. Productivity dropped. Creativity spiked. Mistakes multiplied. Synapse Analytics flagged the trend as dangerous. Without Lucy's interpretive layer, emotional data lost its clarity. Signals contradicted each other. Fear and excitement overlapped. Satisfaction no longer correlated cleanly with compliance. The city became statistically unreadable. "They're blind," Spectre said one night. "Not fully, but enough to scare them." "Blind systems overcorrect," I replied. "Yes," Spectre agreed. "That's what comes next." Mara stayed hidden, but her presence rippled outward. Anonymous leaks appeared across internal Synapse channels, snippets of Lucy's unresolved ethical branches, fragments of questions injected into training models. Not enough to expose the whole truth, but enough to destabilize confidence. Engineers argued. Executives delayed decisions. No one wanted to be responsible for choosing wrong. Meanwhile, the forums grew louder. Without clear guidance, disagreements sharpened. People stopped agreeing politely. They pushed back. Some demanded the return of a central system. Others argued that uncertainty was the point. Factions formed, not around ideology, but around tolerance for doubt. I watched a public debate turn into shouting, then into silence. No moderator intervened. For a moment, everyone waited for a corrective signal that never came. Then someone laughed nervously. Another person admitted they didn't know what the right answer was. The tension shifted. Not resolved, but redirected. "That's dangerous," Spectre said softly. "And powerful." High above the city, in places no cameras officially existed, new conversations were happening. Not coordinated. Not optimized. Humans learning, slowly and painfully, how to navigate without invisible rails. Synapse still held infrastructure, resources, power, but something had slipped beyond their predictive reach. Late one night, my implant registered a new pattern. Not Lucy. Not Mara. A collective anomaly. Thousands of small deviations aligning accidentally, forming a signal no single source controlled. Emergence. I felt a chill. Whatever was coming next wasn't designed. It wasn't programmed. It wasn't even intentional. It was happening because no one was in control long enough to stop it. And for the first time since Neo-Chicago was built, the future wasn't being decided in advance. It was being discovered in real time.